All right, so we've talked about a lot of principles about how to make your venture financially viable and how to scale beyond your pilot to reach as many people as possible. Now we're going to actually try to force you to put it down into numbers. So take a deep breath. Don't panic. This is a very simplified version of a financial template. And the goal here is just to start a conversation with your stakeholders. So I'm going to walk you through this financial template, which has been shared with us by Mike Dempsey, my colleague who teaches at MIT. So I want to thank Mike for his generosity in providing this template and allowing me to share it with you. And what Mike likes to say is that he doesn't want you to worry too much about every entry and every line. What he tells his students is that if you find yourself in a conversation with any stakeholder or funder or anyone where they're arguing with you about a specific number, you're in a good place. So you can flesh out those numbers and take your time in making sure you have the exact numbers over time. This just helps you start those conversations and start getting organized. So the first thing you need to do before you can start filling out the template is calculate a couple of things, which are the market size and the unit offering. The market size means what is the total universe that's possible for you to hypothetically reach? What is the market in which you're participating? Now, the easy way to do this in terms of calculating your participation in that market is the top-down approach by saying, so-and-so industry is $1 billion industry, so even if I can reach 0.001% of that, I'm making so much money. That's the top-down approach. I see students do that a lot, where they say, this is a huge market, and then they're like, even if I reach a small percent and they calculate it, this is how much money I'm going to make. That's super hypothetical, and for me, it's a red flag. I like people to use the bottom-up approach, like we've been using the whole time in this course, starting with like, here's my offering. Here's how many people I think I can reach in year 1. Here's how many people I think I can reach in 5 years, 10 years, etc. And starting from the bottom, calculate how many people you think you can reach, and then divide that by the total market size to see what's your market share. Mike also represents doing both as a check to see, like, are they kind of near each other? So if they meet in the middle, then that's a good sign. So calculate your percentage share in the market. Then calculate or specify your unit offering. This is important because some offerings in social entrepreneurship are less straightforward about like how you're going to package it. So if your offering is like a specific product or like a package of services or a software, then you know what one unit is. It's like a unit that you can sell or provide to multiple end users. In some cases, it's less obvious to say how a unit looks like. So in this case, you're going to have to sit down and think with your team and your stakeholders, like, what is the unit of my offering that's creating the social change I want to create? Like, for example, the services I'm providing to one child over the lifetime of them engaging with me or something like that. And figure out how much does it cost you to produce that unit offering, who's going to pay for it out, and how much they'll pay. So in addition to calculating your share of the market, being able to specify what is the unit of your offering is really important, because we're going to use that for the financial template, like cost per outcome. So sometimes if it's a less straightforward endeavor, you can think about a unit of outcome and what it costs to produce that, if that helps. Okay, so once you've calculated your market share and your unit offering, you're ready to start filling in the template. So let's go through it one row at a time. It's all about estimating your revenue, your expenses, and then the surplus, profit and cash. This may differ for for-profit and nonprofit organizations. So expenses will be more similar across those organizations, but revenue sources might be different. But the financial principles are the same, so this can be used for both. Now, how do we estimate revenue? This is where the unit of your offering is important. What is the number of units that you've sold this year or provided this year for each year? Or you can do it by quarter if you want, if you want to do like a short-term forecast. Okay, so what is the most the units provided, what is the total units sold or provided over time, up till now, cumulatively, what is your share of the market that you've calculated, and what is the average price per unit that people are paying for it. And that helps you calculate your revenue per unit. Now, for some organizations, you might also have revenue from service and support that's ongoing for like a lifetime customer. And then you're able to calculate your total revenue, which is the revenue per unit, and then the revenue from service and support, and you multiply it by the number of units sold. Now, if you don't have a uniform offering, or if you have multiple different offerings or different prices, you can just make different sections and different rows for all the different ones, and then you can add them up at the end. The idea is that this part of the template is where you add up all the revenue streams. And of course, you can feel free to edit the template and make your own or use another one. But the point is you want to be able to add up all your revenue, okay? And don't include here your revenue from funders. There's a different place for that in the template. This is just your earned revenue. Who's paying for your offering, whether it's the end user or a grant-making organization, who's your customer, and what is your earned revenue. Now, expenses. We divide these into variable and fixed. The variable expenses change with the number of units sold, and the variable expenses are composed of the cost of goods sold and the customer acquisition costs. That's your variable expenses. Cost of goods sold, or COGS, is how much it costs to produce your offering per unit, multiplied by the number of units sold. Again, why it's so important to define that unit offering. It's any production cost that increases for each unit of offering. And then the customer acquisition cost is separate. It's how much you're spending to secure your economic buyer, like organizing or traveling to meetings or conferences or paying for a marketing person or something like that. So if you don't have your customer acquisition costs figured out, Mike represents just using a rule of thumb, like saying, I'm going to spend 30% of my revenue on customer acquisition, and just use that, just for your initial calculations. Remember, these are initial estimates. Those are your variable estimates, and then your variable expenses, And then your fixed expenses are the expenses that don't go up for each additional unit of offering. So in most cases, it's usually mostly salaries and personnel costs, because you're going to pay your team regardless of how much they sell. And of course, your team will grow over time, but it doesn't change per unit sold, right? If you're in the medical devices or life sciences sectors, then research and development might be a huge part of your fixed expenses. Again, start with estimates if you're not sure. So some rules of thumbs that Mike shares are like, in the medical sector device, an average salary in the U.S. is $200,000. So you don't have to calculate a different salary for each person. Just say, on average, it's going to be this much. My students really push back on this, and in most sectors they work in most parts of the world, it's much less. So just say what your average salary is going to be in your sector, in your part of the world, and you can start by just putting that down at first, okay? Then you can tweak. Mike also says you can say benefits are 12% of salaries if you're working in a situation where you're providing benefits like healthcare or something to your workers. Overhead, on average, is 8% of costs. Of salaries. So overhead is things like, the equipment you'll use in your office and things like that. You have your rent. Utilities can be estimated as 20% of rent in terms of bills you'll pay for electricity, internet, things like that. So these are just some rules of thumbs that you can use to produce estimates so that you don't have to worry about the exact numbers. For now, you just want to try to get something down, and then you can go out there and check and talk to your stakeholders and tweak it and try to optimize it as much as possible. So those are your fixed expenses. And then we get to the point where you talk about profit and cash. So you add up your expenses and you subtract them from your revenue. And when you first start, this is going to be a negative number. So your expenses will probably be way more than your revenue until you break even, and then it will be positive. Here's where you put the investments that sustain cash flow, regardless of whether you're for-profit or nonprofit. Like, what are your funders financing you in order to help you survive to that place where you break even? Here's where you put that. And that will help your net cash flow to be positive. And many social entrepreneurs forget about cash flow. And it's really important to remember the differences in payment cycles, to remember that your expenses are going to take place before your revenues. So on average, they say you want to have 6 months in the bank so that you can wait out for those revenues to come in. Some people say that on a personal level too, like as a social entrepreneur, before you quit your job and start working on your endeavor, you want to have 6 months in the bank. But also for an organization, especially a nonprofit, where people don't think about this as much, you want to think about cash flow. It's really important. So this brings a really important issue up of what are your startup costs, right? Like those total expenses that will help you reach that break-even point. You want to be able to communicate that to stakeholders, especially funders. And you can use this template for different stages of your endeavor. So you can just use it for a pilot, like how much would it cost to do a pilot? Or how much would it cost to do a proof of concept? Or like once I scale, how many years will it take me to break even? Or what will my growth stage look like? You can have like different phases of your template. So you can use it in as complex and advanced a way as you want, or as simplified and broken down way as you want. It's just a very simplified template to help start a conversation. And there are some check-ins at the end that are already calculated for you. The last thing I want to say about this template is a really important message in social entrepreneurship, which is what are you going to do with surplus revenue? If you don't have surplus revenue, if you're always going to need those grants and that sustained investment or fundraising at that bottom line to make you net positive, then you only have one choice. You're going to be a nonprofit. But you're trying to create as much revenue as you can and reduce expenses as much as you can. So if you have the luxury of having surplus revenue, then you have options. You could be nonprofit and reinvest 100% of your surplus into the mission so that you can still qualify for grants and donations. Or you could be for-profit. And there are advantages to being for-profit, like you can qualify for venture capital and for-profit sources of funding. And even if you're for-profit, you have the opportunity to decide, how much am I going to reinvest in my mission? It could still be 100%. It could be anywhere less than 100%. Some organizations say, I want people to earn dividends and make money, and I want to compete in the for-profit market. Others say, I'll always reinvest 10% of profits in my mission. Others say 100%. So it's up to you. But the point I want to make is that for-profit versus nonprofit, that's not your business model. Some people come up to me and they're like, so what business model do you think I should use, for-profit or nonprofit? And I'm like, that's not the question. I want you to tell me, what is your revenue model? What is your payment model? What is your distribution model? Are you going to be able to generate a surplus revenue? And if yes, what are you going to do with it? Then you've answered your question. And our last video of this model is going to be the case study of Aravind Eye Care Systems, which demonstrates all these different aspects of financial viability and completing your business model.